Lady who won't tip realizes what she left on table. The waiter walked in with their food, and although the delicious scents wafted into her nose, making her mouth water, her gaze was focused on the restaurant's beautiful interior. She asked the waiter about the decor, to which he answered dismissively and left. "He's not getting a tip from me," she told her daughter. Little did she know that the man walking away would hold her life in his hands. When 60-year-old New Yorker Christy Jolly took her daughter for lunch that day, she'd only hoped to celebrate Melissa's new promotion at work. A single mom, Christy had been through a lot. She'd fought through tough times raising her daughter alone. Now a retired senior, she only wanted to spend time with Melissa whenever she could and enjoy life. But what would happen in that restaurant would claim everything she'd worked so hard to achieve. Melissa had gotten her first promotion at work, an occasion that Christy was eager to celebrate. She made plans with her daughter to grab lunch at a fancy restaurant in Manhattan before they'd cook dinner at home as a continuation of the celebration. With everything set, the two met at a famous pizzeria and ordered their food. But as they waited for the pizzas to come, something happened that would put the events of that week rolling. Christy had wanted to redecorate her home for the longest time. She'd grappled with what style to settle for. She couldn't help but notice the restaurant's warm and rugged country-style decor. Thinking it would be the best answer to her problem, she thought it fit to ask the waiter about the decor's name and perhaps its designer. She had no clue how such simple questions would give her sleepless nights. The waiter brought Christy and Melissa's food. Christy asked about the decor as he served them, but the answer wasn't what she was expecting. "I don't know what to tell you, ma'am," the waiter said curtly. "Ask the manager, thanks." He tried to smile and failed before storming off. That's no way to talk to customers, Christy thought. She'd have to teach him a lesson. Tommy Markage regretted his answer as soon as it left his mouth. His body heated uncomfortably, and he cursed himself for letting his personal problems get in the way of his service. He considered walking back to the woman and her daughter and apologizing, but feared escalating matters. He wiped a hand down his face, knowing that was a tip he'd miss out on. Little did he know what fate had in store for him and the woman. An hour passed, and the woman and her daughter paid for their pizzas and left. Although Tommy was sure she hadn't left him a tip, he still hurried over to clear their table. He expertly stacked dirty plates in one hand and picked the towels strewn over the table. And that's when he saw it. Laying beside one of the used towels was a cleaner sheet of paper. Tommy picked it up, thinking it was another sheet to be dumped out. But as he brought it closer, he quickly realized what it was. Tommy almost dropped the dishes in his hand. He swallowed hard as his mind fully registered what he was looking at. How could the woman leave such a thing behind? In Tommy's hand was a check. And not a measly $100 or $1,000 check either. This one was worth $424,000. Tommy stared at the check. He'd been having trouble at medical school for the last week because of tuition fees. It was the exact reason why he'd been so testy lately. He needed money, or he'd miss his finals. Such a check would do more than solve the problem. Christy sat in her daughter's car as they drove home from lunch. She informed Melissa that she'd picked up her savings in a check and it would be enough to redo their home and sustain them for the rest of their lives. She searched around her bag for the check but couldn't find it. Her heartbeat caught and her stomach bloated with anxiety. She couldn't find the check. Christy told Melissa what was happening. She explained that she'd placed the check in her bag about 5 hours before but couldn't seem to find it. The two began their search around the city, visiting and calling all the places Christy had been before they went for lunch. They even called the pizzeria, but the manager's answer left them speechless. "We haven't seen it," the manager said with surety. He insisted that such a trivial document would have been returned immediately were it found within their premises. Christy called the bank to try and report the case, but the answer she received was worse than the restaurant's. The bank told her anybody could cash the hefty check in the next 3 months before they could freeze it. A hot lump of air settled in her stomach. She was about to lose her life savings. Distraught by everything that was happening, Christy turned in for the night. She couldn't believe she'd lost everything she'd spent more than 40 years amassing. Her blood, sweat and tears were slipping out of her reach as she watched. She sat through the night, numb from the pain constantly shooting through her. How could life be so cruel? Tommy sat with his manager at the restaurant as the night passed by. They'd spent the entire afternoon and evening trying to trace a Christy Jolly, the woman whose name was on the $400,000 check. After Tommy found the check, he'd considered cashing it for a chance to change his life, but knew he couldn't. He ran to his manager with the check and they'd started searching for the woman. So why couldn't they find her? Tommy and his manager couldn't find a Christy Jolly who matched the woman's description. They reached out to New York Daily News for help and the media house took 3 days to call back. Their search had collided with a woman scouring the city for a similar check. When Tommy finally met the woman to give her the check, she hugged him, thanking him for being such an amazing person, even though she wasn't nice to him. She'd called a different branch of their restaurant only to come up short. "Don't ever change," she said amid tears.